senior and renowned lawyer Tsatsu Chikata. Good evening to you, Counsel. Thank you for joining us on Agenda. Okay, we can't hear you. If you can unmute yourself so that we can hear you clearly, but I'm sure if you've been following the politics of Ghana, Tsatsu Chikata has been was actually one of the lead counsel or lawyers for the 2012-2013 election petition. So if you can hear us, good evening to you.
Yes.
Welcome to Agenda.
I can hear you, and sorry, I was on mute, but I was recognizing that it's a pleasure to be on Agenda.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll also be joined by Franklin Kujo. He's founding president, Imani Africa, as well as Vincent Eko. He is the deputy Safua. He is deputy local government minister representing Tafo Pankrono in the Ashanti region. He'll be joining us as well. But I want to start this conversation rolling, and we want to look at SAL, the constituency. Well, it's under the constituency of Gwan, which has been given that golden opportunity to get a representative for parliament. In Parliament going into this year's general election. And I want to start with you, Counsel. I mean, we saw what happened prior to the 2020 general election. They were disenfranchised. A number of you, including yourself, even in that petition to the High Court, felt that it was unjust. It wasn't justified, really, how it was done. But now the Electoral Commission is making it possible, as it were, for these four communities to vote under the Gwan constituency. It must be very good news for you. You must be happy.
Well, we hope so. Before the 2020 elections, various delegations from these communities actually met with the Electoral Commission about the vote and got all kinds of assurances that they would be able to vote in the parliamentary as well as in the presidential elections. Suddenly, on the eve of the elections, 6th December to be precise, in the evening, they had announcements on radio and in the media which said that they could only vote in the presidential election but not in the parliamentary election. And that is why, indeed, for the last 4 years. And this is, I mean, it's a very serious situation. We shouldn't just gloss over it, that a group of people, communities in Ghana, have been unrepresented in Parliament over the last almost 4 years as we're coming into that. So I think that we have to get into why such a thing could happen. What has been the role of the Electoral Commission, which has a certain mandate under the Constitution to make sure that democracy is protected? What has been their role in undermining democracy?
What has been their role? From what you said, what do you think has been the issue? Because I remember that somewhere in February, I believe this year, we had the Electoral Commission boss or a statement from the EC indicating that, well, at the time they wanted to ensure that SAL was able to participate in the 2020 general election. Parliament in November had gone on recess, and therefore it couldn't really do much.
That's a nonsense, because everybody knows that Parliament has a certain timetable, and if you're taking steps to ensure that these people have their right to vote protected, I think you do it according to the timetable of Parliament. But you know what? I think that what is striking over the years, in my mind, is the inconsistent positions that the EC has been taking on the matter. Because 6th of December, you announce that they cannot vote, and you give reasons like you're mentioning that Parliament is about to rise and so on. But if you knew that you were going to have to create a constituency for them because it had been determined that they should not be part of Hohoe constituency anymore. There are legal steps that you should take. But when you look at the legal steps that they took, I mean, those legal steps did not live up to the requirements of the law. For instance, they passed a constitutional instrument 119, which was called the District Electoral Areas and Designation of Units Regulations, in which they sought to move, these people into Jasikan districts. But the Electoral Commission doesn't have power to create or to change districts. So, I mean, they have some, a role in making recommendations for districts to be created, but they can't create districts. So that constitutional instrument does not meet, a simple test of legality. Then later, around July 2020, they passed another constitutional instrument, 128, Representation of the People Parliamentary Constituencies Instrument, in which they claimed that they were moving those electoral areas into another constituency, Boem constituency. Now, it's very interesting. Earlier this year, in around May, I think during an exchange of, positions, I mean, a very rigorous debate with Franklin Cudjoe, we had the Electoral Commission on the 16th of May come up to say that the reason that they could not allow the Sal people to vote in the Boem constituency was because they could not be part of the Jasikan district, because if they joined the Jasikan district, it would mean that the representative for Boem would actually be covering two different districts, a Guan district and a Jasikan district. Now, this was 16th of May this year that they were giving that explanation. They said it was non-compliant with the Local Government Act, the Local Governance Act. Now, I mean, did they suddenly realize this in May this year? And clearly, from the beginning, December 2020, if they really believed that these people had become part of the Boem constituency, I guess then they should have asked them to vote in Boem constituency.
Do I hear you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do I hear you say that the EC intentionally did that? Because if I read a statement from the Electoral Commission, the one I was referring to earlier, it gave explanations as to why it felt that anybody who is claiming that the Electoral Commission intentionally disenfranchised people is just being disingenuous.
Well, I mean, obviously they did it deliberately, in the sense that they issued an announcement saying that people cannot vote. That's a deliberate act. I mean, when you say intentional or whatever, I don't know what other meaning you can attribute. They intentionally put out a statement on the eve of the election saying to some people, you cannot vote in parliamentary elections. That happened. That actually happened. And the point that I want to end with is that even that constitutional instrument 128 does not meet basic tests of constitutionality, because the Electoral Commission is governed by provisions of the Constitution. If you look at what Article 47(5) of the Constitution sets out, there are ways in which you can alter constituencies or their boundaries. Now, the people in Tsatsu had been part of Hohoe constituency since 2016. And under Article 47(5), you can change those constituencies in not less than 7 years or on the basis of a census. There are clear provisions as to how you can change the constituency. Nothing like that had, it wasn't 7 years in 2020, 2016 wasn't 7 years ago. And the other preconditions for changing the boundaries had not happened. So, I mean, even at that time, it did not make sense. So why was there such a determination so deliberately to create seeming legal frameworks which were inconsistent with the laws of the land? And then suddenly in May this year, we have an acknowledgement by themselves that they also thought that they couldn't do it because it was in contravention of something.
Which were inconsistent with the laws of Ghana. That's what you say. I want to come to my panel right now, but I want to ask you this last question before I come to my panel to get their preliminary thought on this, and we'll go to the other issue. I heard you made 2 points. You said that we cannot gloss over this. Yes, EC is giving the people the opportunity to vote this year, so seemingly it looks like the issue has been solved, but you're still saying that we cannot gloss over this, and then you also make an allegation of inconsistency of the Electoral Commission. Why are you saying these? Are you worried that perhaps we could see a repeat of what happened in 2020, briefly?
Well, I hope not, but you can never tell because, like I said, the track record has not been one of consistency.
I'm coming to you, Samuel Kudjeto Ablakwa.
Not according to me, according to the facts, for goodness sake. I mean, we just have to look at the facts. In 2020, 6 December, they were not allowed to vote, even though supposedly constitutional instruments had been created.
So I want to come to you, Mr. Ablakwa, just your brief comment on this, because we need to really talk about the other issues that are going to affect us really in this year's general election. What's your thought on what Mr. Chikata is saying?
Well, good evening. First of all, I think it is important to celebrate Uncle Chachi Chikata on this matter. He has put up such a spirited defense of the people of Central Kofi, Akpafu, Lolobi, and Likpe. A man of considerable age. He has, virtually on a daily basis, pursued this matter for the last 4 years. I remember that he was in the High Court in Hohoe, had to be traveling, you know, the risk involved, the distance, the inconvenience, and all of that. And I think that senior citizens like him, statesmen par excellence like him, who, you know, dedicate themselves and sacrifice so that our constitution will be respected and the rights of citizens will be respected, ought to be celebrated. And I think that tonight, I know he doesn't like these things. He's very, you know, modest and doesn't like to be praised. But I mean, I am inspired by his spirited defense of the people of SAR. And look, let's be honest. This is a matter that clearly falls within the realm of gerrymandering. It was clear from the outset that there was an agenda, and that agenda was to facilitate the victory of the ruling government in Hohoe, and that is what became the outcome. I hold in my hands a petition from this Joint Steering Committee of the Akpafu and Lolobi traditional areas on the 27th of November 2020. They wrote to the Electoral Commission seeking clarity on this matter. It reads, the Joint Steering Committee of the Akpafu and Lolobi traditional areas, by this petition, respectfully seek urgent clarification and assurance over their electoral status and voting mandates in the upcoming 2020 elections. This is to prevent discrimination and disenfranchisement of our people by administrative muddling on technicalities. By our reckoning and all indications, we remain part of the electoral areas under the Hohoe constituency. By our reckoning and all indications, we remain part of the electoral areas under the Hohoe constituencies in the Hohoe district of the Volta region in the current electoral cycle. we are surprised to find in the published voters register that we are assigned to Jasikan district, with which we have had no prior history, mandate or engagement at the primaries. You must be aware that we were lumped into the new OT region in error and against our express wishes, which matter is currently before the law courts. And they continued. Now, the Electoral Commission...
And this is despite the referendum that was organized where 50% of the people in these respective areas participated.
Exactly. The Electoral Commission then met this eminent group and assured them that you will vote, you have no qualms, no fears at all, be rest assured. Only for this press release on the eve of the election by the Electoral Commission, confirming their fears. The Electoral Commission issued this statement, a copy of which I have in my hands, saying that the Commission wishes to announce for the information of the general public, especially voters in the Boem constituency, that the 7th December 2020 presidential parliamentary election will take place in the Boem constituency as scheduled from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. However, as a result of the creation of the Guan district level local government Guan District Assembly Establishment Instrument 2020, and pending the creation of the Guan constituency, eligible voters in the Guan district will vote only in the presidential election, but not in the parliamentary election in the Boem constituency. Voters in the Guan district are to take note of this directive from the Electoral Commission.
So from what you're reading and your thought pattern, as it were, you seem to agree with Mr. Chikata that this was intentionally done to disenfranchise the people of South.
Absolutely. This is a clear case of gerrymandering which denied the people of the Article 42 right. Look, Article 42 of our Constitution is very clear. The right to vote in an election. It is a right and it is an entitlement. You see, in your introduction, I heard you say, oh, they now have a golden opportunity. No, it's a right. I feel so embarrassed that I have served in this 8th parliament, which is not whole, which is not complete. A parliament that did not have 4 communities represented. And then we say that we are representatives of the people. We are just representatives of some of the people, not all the people. It is forever a scar on the conscience of our democracy.
Forever a scar on the conscience of our democracy.
And this should not... Look, you read the 15th May 2024 statement by the Electoral Commission. I mean, it's so appalling, so condemnable. The Electoral Commission says that they didn't know that Parliament will go on recess at the time, and that because of the recess, they couldn't act. Such gross incompetence. Who does not know the parliamentary calendar in this country? It is published well ahead of time. In any case, our engagement with the Electoral Commission, as an MP in my 3rd term, 12 years now, I can tell you that we have sat to meet the 21-day requirements of CIs on even far less important matters, which do not even border on constitutional rights. We are told to come and sit. You know, ordinarily, we don't sit on Mondays and weekends. But for airlines to mature, some of which we are now repealing today, like that airline, that obnoxious airline 2462, which allows the president
mining in forest reserves.
Exactly. All airlines of that nature have all been passed. We are called to come and sit Mondays, sometimes on Saturdays, so that these airlines will meet the 21-day maturity period. So let me ask, look, the fact that the Electoral Commission is just making excuses, passing the buck. Then there was a day I asked the Attorney General a question in Parliament. He also came saying, don't blame me, blame Electoral Commission. The local government ministry is also saying that, you know what, everybody is passing the buck. Nobody is taking responsibility. Meanwhile, as Professor Azan will say, the cardinal sin of this 8th Parliament is the fact that it is the only parliament in the history of our entire republic which has been an incomplete parliament, a parliament which was not whole, a parliament which did not represent as many as four communities
with over 17,000 votes.
And we think that this is something that we should tolerate, we should accept. So we have been most unfair, and I think that it is so condemnable that the institutions which acted in such a crude manner, without recourse to due process, without recourse to our constitution, the rights of the people, and they have even refused to take responsibility and to give us assurances that this will never occur in our history. It must be condemned by all of us.
Let me ask you very briefly.
Do not deserve this.
Let me ask you very briefly, and I'll get a response of Frank Davis. I mean, you say that this is a scar on our democracy, but what would you say to critics or skeptics who would argue that, okay, it's a scar, but at the end of the day, they are voting this year, so why don't we move on?
No, nobody, the 4 years, what they have lost, taxation without representation, they are citizens, their rights. Look, I have a Hansard here of 10th November 2023. Out of empathy, my conscience feeling so bad, I had to file questions on their behalf because they have no representation. And this 10th November question I filed in 2023 had to do with their roads, their road network. And the roads minister, if you go through the column 104, you see the then roads minister, Honorable Amakwata, saying that they have not been programmed yet. They don't have plans for them, but they are hoping that who was to follow up on all of this? And this is just one sector. You know, so you can't quantify what they have lost. Members of parliament have access to the MP's common fund. And all of us, you see us on a daily basis. We are doing interventions, scholarships here. We are advocating on behalf of our constituents. We are representing them. We are making sure that if there are bad roads, if they need hospitals, if they need potable water, who wants to do all of this for them? Who wants to champion their cause? Meanwhile, they are also citizens. They have paid taxes. They continue to pay taxes, all including the obnoxious ones, the e-levies, the emission levy, the COVID tax, which should not be on our books. They are paying. And yet, nobody is representing them and championing their cause.
Nobody is championing their cause.
This is an aberration which should never have occurred.
It should never have occurred. Let me get your thoughts.